You don't know, you better ask somebody. You listening to the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and if you haven't noticed, the Olympic Games are going on in South Korea, and they are treating the athletes like the horses that they are. And what I mean by that is they're looking at the athletes to generate revenue, and there is a total lack of concern for rider safety. It sucks. The IOC was pretty much like, sorry girls, we're going to use you for revenue and ratings, and we know you worked your asses off the past 4 years, but you're going to have to compete in 30-mile-an-hour winds, and hopefully none of you will get seriously injured. Any other contest would have been put on weather hold, just like they did for the ski race events. But these aren't ski racers, these are snowboarders, and they are not treated on an equal level, even though they get much more attention, especially here in the United States. Hopefully, they don't have those 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts when my guest David Wise tries to win his second consecutive gold medal. I caught up with David about a month before the Olympics and got his whole story. For some reason, when I lined up David for the show, I didn't think I was going to like him that much. I don't really know why. Maybe it's the whole athlete with faith thing that can rub me the wrong way at times, but it wasn't the case with David. He's awesome, and after chatting, I'm a big fan of not only David skiing, but of him as a person, and I really want to see him on top of that podium in South Korea. Before we get into the podcast, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, share my posts on social media, and reach out to me with any feedback or concerns. My email is mike@thepowellmovement.com. Finally, I need to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, the Summit at Snoqualmie, and Unofficial Networks. Please support them and save some money by using the codes that are in their ads. Now, let's talk to 2014 halfpipe gold medalist and arguably the best pipe skier of all time, David Wise.
Yo.
It is happening.
We actually are making this thing work, man.
It would happen at some point. You're an Olympian with a lot of shit going on, I would think, right about now.
Man. Yeah, that was the most frustrating part about the other day is I was ready.
You downloaded the iPhone update, which screwed up your phone, and we couldn't do the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. I wish I could go back in time and undo that decision.
Where are you right now?
We're in Breck, skiing some halfpipe. We're competing in Snowmass next week. So we're just finishing out the week here, doing some training, and then headed to Snowmass the day after tomorrow.
And how's it there? Is it just hard and fast right now?
Oh, dude, it's as dismal here as it is everywhere else. There's some snow, but not much.
It's crazy what a difference a year makes.
Yeah, it is. We were buried last year.
Yeah, it was POW everywhere, and I'm sure it was a lot of soft pipes and being frustrated sometimes with weather at contests, which you can't predict. But this year, they should be all bulletproof.
Yeah, I mean, they're all man-made, so, the snow quality isn't quite as good. But at the end of the day, if they can get enough snow to make us a half pipe, then the weather doesn't affect us as much. I mean, obviously, I like to ski POW just as much as everybody else does. So I would love for there to be a lot more snow out here. But during contest time, I'd rather it didn't snow for sure.
Yeah, but you say you like to ski POW just like everybody else does, but it's funny, I've done a few of these interviews, we're leading up to the games, I've had a lot of people on, and some people don't ski POW. If you're born in the Midwest, I would talk to Gepper the other day, skiing POW really wasn't his thing, so it's not everybody skis POW, but I think if you're born in Reno, POW is definitely something that is on your mind all the time when you're not competing.
I guess so, man. I don't know how they haven't caught the addiction yet, because I swear there's no better feeling in the world than just smashing soft snow.
Yeah.
But it always surprises me when people are like, oh, no, I'd rather ski park. I'm like, no, park is what's there when there isn't POW out there. Like, if there's no powder to be smashed, then you go ski the park. But if there is POW to be smashed, then you go smash the powder.
Totally. But to each his own, and it's worked out for him. Yeah. I kind of think if you haven't had that bug bite you yet, that maybe you're not going to be a lifelong skier, that maybe you're going to compete.
Yeah, maybe it's an era. It's an era in your life and you'll move on to something else.
Yeah, but some people are just addicted to the feeling of skiing powder. That's what makes people quit their jobs, move to a resort, and live there the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there, too, is the fact that for some people, the addiction is so deep. Like, I'll go ski when it's icy. I'll go ski when it's windy. I'll go ski when it's flat light. I'll go ski in any conditions just because, obviously, the best conditions are my favorite. Skiing powder underneath the bluebird sky is what I would choose if I had my choice. But if I don't have my choice, am I going to go out and ski anyways? Absolutely. And so I think there is definitely a difference in people. Some people was like, well, it's not that good out there, I'm not going to go ski. It's like, no, for me, skiing is skiing, and I know I can enjoy any version of it. So it's like I said, a soul deep addiction. You can kind of tell who has the addiction to that level and who doesn't.
You have another addiction as well. It sounds like bow hunting is another thing that you do pretty seriously.
Yeah. Maybe it's personality based. Maybe it's just history based, but I have an inability to like dip my toes in something. Like if I like something, I really, really like it. And yeah, I grew up hunting with my old man, and it was just kind of a hobby. It was rifle hunting, rifle and shotgun. We would hunt birds and big game once or twice a year. And I always enjoyed that, but it was just kind of a hobby. It was once or twice a year thing. And then after the Olympics in 2014, I had so much going on for so long, so many interviews and media and appearances and sponsorship obligations and photo shoots and video shoots and just like so much mayhem. All good things, obviously, but I just needed some way to unwind. And a friend of mine, Remy Warren, is a professional hunter and guide. And he was like, man, I really think you should get into shooting a compound bow. So he hooked me up with a bow, let me try it out. And as soon as I got into it, like it was an addiction. I don't know. There's something about it that kind of plays off of the things that I've been doing for a long time athletically. You have to be really focused and concentrated, but there's also this like almost like Zen yoga style side to it where you have to be as calm as you can possibly be. Slow your heart rate down as low as you can get it while still being focused and execute the shot well. And so I really fell in love with shooting my bow, and I got into target archery, and I actually compete in target archery now. And then, just made the natural progression from shooting a bow and doing targets to, as a lifelong hunter, the bow hunting thing. And bow hunting is, I would describe it, especially out in the West, because it's mostly spot and stock. So we're not sitting in a tree stand waiting for something to walk under us. We're going out there and trying to put a sneak on it. And it can be one of the hardest things to do that I've ever done in my life. Your chances of success are, in Nevada, I think the percentage is as low as 7%. That's the people who are successful who go out there and attempt it. So that's not even counting the people who didn't go out and try. But with their harvest reporting is 7% of bow hunters actually get a big game animal with a bow. So it's super challenging. But man, being able to put something on the table and feed my family with something that I shot with my bow, it was the most satisfying feeling of my life. And since then, the addiction has just gotten worse and worse, and it continues to get worse. It hasn't stopped.
And you go out there for like a week at a time, maybe not every time, but you'll go out days on end by yourself.
I actually started filming for a show called Solo Hunter. So yeah, it's self-filmed and you're out there alone. And I really enjoy that because I'm kind of an individualist at heart. Anyways, I often train by myself, and I don't mind being by myself. I like the peace and solitude of it. So a lot of times, yeah, when I'm out hunting, I'm alone. And honestly, I've just had greater percentage of success the further away I get from other people. So it's definitely my goal a lot of times when I plan a hunt is how far away can I get from the closest road? So I spend a lot of time alone and pretty far back.
How many days do you think you're out in the wild?
Like in a year?
In the recent years when you've had time, I know at the Olympic year you had no time.
Well, actually, it's one of my priorities because on the bow hunting topic, I've actually done a little bit of testing as far as what proteins I'm eating and how my body performs. And I actually perform at the highest percentage when I'm eating game meat versus anything else. Like I can eat grass-fed organic beef, I can eat soy protein, I can eat all kinds of other things, but nothing performs better for me than eating game meat. So for me, that's just a really good excuse to go hunt more. Even though it's an Olympic year, I still got out. This year, I did 8 days in Nevada and then 7 days in Utah. So considering it's an Olympic year, that was pretty dang good. On a year when I have my choice, like if I can go out and hunt as much as I want to, yeah, I would do 3 or 4 big trips like that where I go out for a week at a time or 10 days at a time.
I couldn't spend that much time with myself. I need about 3 minutes by myself, and I usually feel good. Did you test any of the proteins against fast food just for comparison to say, hey, on grass-fed, I did this. On McDonald's, I did this?
Maybe not as specifically, but I could tell you that I eat fast food too. I'm an athlete, and a lot of times, when it's 10 o'clock at night and you don't have anything else to eat, and you're traveling, you end up getting fast food. I didn't do it as officially as I did the other testing, but I can tell you that I don't perform too good on fast food.
I'm going to jump into my sponsors real quick. And the first sponsor is Evo, and they are way more than just the best ski, snowboard, surf, bike, skate, and clothing website in the country. They also have retail locations in Denver, Seattle, and Portland, and they carry the best brands, and they only hire the most knowledgeable and approachable people to make your shopping experience great. Evo prides itself on its core values of creating a gathering place with a cause. They are an art gallery, a movie venue, a travel base with the goal of making a difference in the world. On the web front, Evo offers a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. And they have sales. Their next sale, the President's Day sale, ends on February 20th. And on top of that, for listening to the show, they're going to give you 10% off your entire order. When you check out of evo.com, use the code capital TPM, the number 10, all one word at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your order. My next sponsor is Rescue Water. And if you've been listening to the podcast and still haven't tried Rescue Water, you're blowing it. Why? Well, Rescue Water is all about proactive recovery. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, what does that even mean? Think of it like this. If you're really tired, you skip the coffee and grab an energy drink. It's a no-brainer. Well, if you really need to hydrate, like when you finish your workout, get done practice, or get off the mountain or trail, skip the sports drink and drink a cold Rescue Water. There's no better choice for replacing electrolytes, and you'll feel better than ever. I should mention that I drink one before bed on big nights. Since I've started doing that, I haven't had a headache in the morning. It really works for me, and you can make it work for you by heading over to rescuewater.com, and you'll save 20% on a 12-pack case when you enter the code RESQWATERTPM. That's all one word. And Rescue Water is available on Amazon and Amazon Prime. Those are my sponsors right there. Back to you, and you were born and raised in Reno, Nevada.
Yep, born and raised.
Now, some people would say that New Jersey is one armpit of the country and Reno is the other. I hear there's a ton of change going on in Reno. What was it like to grow up there?
If you guys want to keep saying that Reno's the armpit of the country, that's fine with me because I like it how it is.
It's changing though, right? Considerably?
It is. It's changing a lot, yeah. The thing about Reno is, I don't know, I guess we get a bad rap because we have the gambling and legalized prostitution isn't too far away.
I would say the bad rap is from the seediness of the downtown.
Yeah, but do you know a downtown that doesn't have homeless people?
No, and I wouldn't say it's just the homeless people. I get a weird vibe sometimes when I'm in Reno, and can't say that I get that everywhere.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's cool. I mean, I enjoy going there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't spend a lot of time in the downtown area either. Certainly things are improving downtown, and Reno, the area in general, is exploding. Real estate is insane right now. People are building. People are moving in from other places. The reality is, for me, I'm an outdoorsman, and that's why I love Reno. I live about 10 miles outside of town, and I just like to spend my time in the mountains. And
seen a lot of places now,
Tahoe, and you can get after skiing is just amazing. They have some of those Pacific storms that come through and just dump Lake all over everything, cover everything up. In my life, and I'm not going to say that's happened a lot yet this year, but hopefully it turns around. You're not far from a lot of other kinds of adventures that you can't see elsewhere. You know, the wide open spaces that we have in Nevada have their own version of beauty. I'm a big fan of the high desert, especially being a hunter. I like to get out into these vast wildernesses that don't have any people in them. And so for me, it's a great spot. And I've certainly traveled a lot and toyed with the idea of living other places. And I don't really see any need. I can get after anything I want to.
Are you a big bowler?
I mean, I'm competitive, so I'll go out and roll a ball once in a while with my friends, but I'm not hugely into it.
I think Reno's like the capital of the world of bowling as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think you have some big bowling Hall of Fame.
There's a big all bowling alley, so I'm guessing that's probably where it's all centered around.
So growing up, parents together in Reno?
Yep, my parents split up when I was 15, but they both still live in town, and now I have two little ones, so it's nice having everybody around to help take care of the kids.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Divorce sucks for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
But when you have two sets of grandparents, it makes for a lot easier childcare.
It does. It really does. Because, yeah, you're not burning too much of one bridge because you can just take them off to the other set. That's very true.
It's a nice thing, but your parents were together for most of your life, and when they split up, you were traveling a ton, so it was a different experience for you maybe than a lot of kids, who knows. But growing up there, you start skiing when you're probably really young, and it's Sky Tavern was where you learned how to ski?
Yep. My old man actually was the president at Sky Tavern when I was, 2 and 3, and he and my mom actually started an under 6 ski program there, so that was where I learned how to ski, and I don't remember ever not being a skier in my life.
I know your dad was a racer. Is your mom a skier as well?
Not as much anymore, but yeah, she grew up in Oregon, and her dad owned a little ski resort, kind of a little make your own rope tow type of a ski resort growing up. So she was a lifelong skier as well. So it was just something that we did as a family. There was no one person will stay home with the people who don't want to ski. It's like, no, we all piled in the car and we went skiing. That's what we would do every weekend.
So you, your mom, dad, and you have twin sisters as well?
Yep.
Cool. Older, younger?
They're older. They're 3.5 years older than me.
Okay. And are you guys tight?
Yeah, real tight.
Or are they like super proud older sisters who are like, look at what my brother's done?
Yeah, I don't know if you know anything about my sisters, but they're pretty high achieving individuals themselves. One of them is a surgeon, and the other one is a pilot in the Air Force, flies C-130s. And Christy, the pilot, actually lost her leg in an unfortunate boating accident a couple years ago. But she decided she wasn't going to let life serve her lemons and not make lemonade. So she decided she was going to take on the challenge and become the first female above the knee amputee to return to full active duty flying for the Air Force or for anywhere in the armed services. So I think they are proud of me for sure. And I feel like, if I could give anybody credit for contributing to my journey, it's definitely my sisters rank really high on that list. But at the same time, they're crushing it in what they do too. So I'm a super proud brother.
You brought up your sister losing her leg. And one thing that you're doing, which is different, I think, than anybody else that's ever skied has done, is there's something that's known as the 10% rule.
Yeah.
When you win contests, you take 10% of your money and you go to the bar and you throw down and people are going to have a good time. And that's been a standard. And since you were 18 years old, so you're just turning 18 and competing, you're seeing that. And I'm sure you're allowed in the bars at that point because you're an athlete and you can usually get your way in. What's the craziest 10% rule spend that you've ever seen?
I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but the 10% rule it kind of mellowed out from the OG days because it was way more of a thing during the Tanner Hall, Simon Dumont, Scott Hibbert era. There was the 10% rule police. They'd escort you when you won up to the bar and they'd say, this individual right here is going to put $2,500 down right now. And that has definitely gone away. I mean, certainly everybody takes their friends out and have a good time, but I don't know that it's as strict as it used to be for sure.
And what are you doing with your 10%?
I really do feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And if I can take that and in any way give something back to the world, I feel like I kind of need to, So my sisters actually both started a nonprofit called One Leg Up on Life based on my sister Christy's experience with losing her leg and her need for prosthetics and how having these prosthetics like a running leg and a swimming leg and things like that enabled her to kind of enrich her life in a way that she wasn't sure she was ever going to be able to when she lost her leg. She had that experience. And then my other sister, Jessica, through her undergrad and going through her medical school and everything, had been doing a lot of volunteering down in the Dominican Republic. And then when the earthquake happened in Haiti and had seen a lot of amputees who just weren't quite getting what they needed as far as prosthetics went. So I think they kind of embraced that and took the experience that they both had and decided, hey, we see a need here that we're going to try to meet. So they started this organization, One Leg Up on Life. You guys can check it out at oneleguponlife.org. And my way of partnering with that, obviously it's an Olympic year and I'm pretty busy. I can't just make a bunch of trips down to Haiti with them. But I feel like I can give back financially. So every time I'm on the podium this year, I'm giving 10% of my winnings to their organization. And I know it's going to a good spot. And I know that if anything, I can take the bounty of what I'm doing and give back to people who are less fortunate.
So they're going to take the kids from Haiti and the amputees to the bar with your 10%. And it'll be like the old 10% rule, but for people that are less fortunate. Maybe not.
There you go.
Your dad said you could snowboard when you had mastered skiing. Around 11 years old is when you really master skiing. In his eyes, you had been racing for a while. Were you really excited to try snowboarding?
I think he was scheming because I think he wanted me to be a skier, but that was his way of like, maybe if I hold out long enough and he gets good enough at skiing, he'll really fall in love with skiing and then he won't want to be a snowboarder. But the reason I wanted to snowboard is because that was when terrain parks were getting big. And there was terrain parks at the mountains that I skied at. And honestly, I didn't see too many skiers in the terrain parks back then. So I wanted to be a snowboarder for that reason, pretty much, and that reason alone. And yeah, my dad said I had to reach a certain level at skiing before I could try snowboarding. He was totally willing to let me try it, but he just didn't want me to get into it too young for whatever reason. I look back on it and kind of smile about it now because, like, if my kids asked me to snowboard tomorrow, I'd let them. But that was my dad's style. And so, yeah, I raced. I really enjoyed racing. I enjoyed going fast more than anything. I think I was best at slalom when I raced, but all I ever cared about was Super G. I was too young to do downhill, but I wanted to go as fast as I could. And every once in a while, there was like a knuckle or a roller in the Super G course, which you're supposed to absorb because that's the fastest way to go. But I would always pop off of them. And I think my race coaches kind of knew, we might have this kid on our team for a while, but he's headed a different direction because I was always getting caught sneaking off to the terrain park in between training and breaking my race skis and stuff. So it was kind of a known fact. Dave likes to fly more than he likes to go fast.
Were you good?
I was decent. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say what good is, but I was in the top 5 in the West in my age group, or the top 10 at least, but that was super young. So it's hard to quantify that. But certainly when I switched at age 11, my dad finally let me try a freestyle team. So I guess to complete the snowboarding story, basically by the time I got good enough at skiing that my dad was going to let me try snowboarding was when Tanner Hall and Candide and CR were all crushing it in the park. And I was like, man, maybe I don't have to learn how to snowboard. I can just ski in the park. I kind of lost interest in really trying snowboarding or in getting proficient at snowboarding. I had tried it at that point, and I was just like, you know what? I really like this skiing thing. Maybe I'll stick with park skiing. So my dad finally let me try a freestyle team. And his caveat was, you're competitive in racing. I want you to do a race team and a freestyle team. Split your time between racing and freestyle for 1 year and just do a trial year. And I made it about halfway through the year. And that was the year that I was in the top 10, kind of in my age group for the West in racing. And I was at the bottom of the barrel competing in moguls because I'd never skied moguls before in my life, and made it halfway through the season and was like, Dad, I want to do freestyle. Like, I'm done with this racing thing. Like, this freestyle thing is where I'm headed. So it's kind of difficult for him to wrap his mind around that because I was decently successful at racing and I was doing really awful because it was brand new to me, the freestyle things. But it was just where I wanted to be. And shortly thereafter, I started competing in slopestyle and big air and was pretty quickly successful. So I don't think it caused him too much stress, but it was definitely something I had to talk through with him long and hard.
Were you hitting bumps in your spandex? Did you have any time to change?
Yeah, man, you're taking me way back. This is a long time ago now. I would actually, wear my speed suit under my freestyle clothes, my ski clothes, basically. And I would train in the morning, and then I would go hit the mobile course in the afternoon. And I had like a full face race helmet, and I always had a big head as a kid, so I had this giant full face helmet, and I looked like such a goon out there. It was so funny, but I was fearless.
Are you doing any other sports as a kid? Did you ever play any team sports?
Yeah, I love sports still. I still play softball. I have a men's league softball team that I started playing on after high school, and I just play every year, every summer. It's a great release for me. I grew up playing football and baseball, kind of the American sports, played a little soccer. I actually played football and baseball in high school till about my junior year when I realized, hey, this skiing thing is looking like I got a pretty good chance. I need to focus. At that point, I was still actually attending regular high school classes and traveling and competing and doing things like the US Open and stuff. So I basically had to quit playing football and baseball because I couldn't keep up academically and ski. I kind of had to make the choice. Like, either I'm going to do okay in academics and ski, or I'm going to do really poorly in academics and play baseball and ski. So that's when I kind of gave up on playing baseball, but I still love baseball. If it was easier to play actual baseball, like competitive baseball, I would still play. But softball's a little easier because you don't have to have a pitcher and all that kind of stuff.
What athletes are you looking up to at that point? Are you involved in the ski scene and know what's going on?
Yeah, being from Reno, I was always a little bit of the odd man out. There wasn't a huge, I only skied on the weekends until I was like, 12 or 13. So I wasn't super involved, but I was definitely watching Tanner Hall and CR Johnson and Yoon Olsen and TJ Schiller from afar. and they would cruise through Tahoe in the spring and film and stuff. So I was very aware of who those guys were and what they were doing, and especially Tanner. I always like to try to copy Tanner's runs in talking about half pipe. I would see like his pipe runs and I'd be like, okay, I think I can do all those tricks. And I would try to copy his runs. And so, yeah, I remember I was definitely super inspired by those guys. And ironically, when I was a young kid, I was kind of a late bloomer. I feel like maybe I didn't hit puberty till I was like 15. So I was a small kid in high school. And that was a huge factor in my decision to pursue skiing versus pursuing baseball, because all of my life I had been pretty high level in baseball, making the all-star teams and things like that. Then all of a sudden everybody grew and got strong and I didn't. But it didn't matter how big you were in skiing, as long as you knew where your body was. It's a finesse sport. It's an agility sport. So I was a small kid. I think when I started high school, I was 5'1", maybe 100 pounds.
Whoa.
Which is kind of crazy because now I'm 6'1", 195 pounds. So if I had gotten as big as I am now at an early age, I might have been more inclined to pursue baseball. But, I feel like God lines things up like that for you sometimes. And it worked out in my favor because I really loved skiing and I started pursuing skiing full force. And inevitably I grew, and now I have to almost battle my body. I feel like I have to spend a lot more time in the gym just to stay strong enough to wield this big carcass around.
And what group did he fit in high school? Being a 5'1", 100-pounder, and I heard you say God in there, I'm going to guess a young lifer, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was sort of like an island. I wasn't like an outcast necessarily, but I just would float from group to group. I was fortunate to have sisters. My sisters were seniors when I was a freshman, and I was kind of an old soul growing up. And I hung out a lot with my sisters and their friends. So when I started high school, all the seniors already knew who I was. And my sisters had like a zero period, like a really early morning class that I didn't have. So I couldn't ride to school with my sisters. But one of their friends, who was a cute chick, drove me to school every single day because she lived just down the street from me. So I had a little bit of I wouldn't call it popularity, but definitely I had a little bit of edge. People didn't really know who I was or what I was about because I spent so much time traveling and skiing, but I wasn't an outcast or like somebody people were bullying either. And I played football. Like I had no lack of courage when it came to fighting people if they picked on me, or just, when we were doing drills and hitting in football, I would hit people as hard as I possibly could. That wasn't super hard because I was only wielding 100 pounds, but they knew that I was feisty one way or the other.
And skiing wise, that's ramping up for you too. You start competing at 13-ish.
Regionally, I started competing 11, 12, and then started, traveling for things like junior nationals. And I think I went to the US Open when I was 14 for the first time, 13 or 14. So it got pretty national pretty fast.
How are you doing this travel? Do your parents have a lot of money, or is it something that you're working hard for in the summers? How do you come up with the finances to do what you're doing at that age?
A little bit of both. Certainly, I can tell you that I wouldn't have succeeded in my skiing career if my parents hadn't supported me. At the same time, I wouldn't describe us as a rich family. We basically used every dollar we had and every moment of vacation time my parents could muster and poured it into skiing. The first actual sunny vacation of my life, I went to the Bahamas with my wife after the Olympics. So it was not a thing. We just didn't take vacations. That wasn't a thing for my family. And there was a lot of sacrifice involved on my parents' side. But I also worked. I was a really industrious kid. And that's something that I'm trying to inspire kids these days to get into as well. Because as soon as I was old enough to push my lawnmower around the neighborhood, I was out there knocking on doors. Hey, can I mow your lawn for you? Hey, can I rake up the leaves? And then when it would snow in the winter, I would take the shovel around and be like, hey, will you pay me $10 to shovel your driveway? As soon as I turned 16 and had my own car, I started working and kind of worked my way through it. And then when I turned 18, I told my old man, hey, if I'm going to make it in this professional skiing thing, it's not going to be because you paid my bills along the way. I need to do this on my own. So I'm not taking any more money from you. I'm going to try to do this on my own. And I entered a phase of some pretty thin living, eating ramen, sleeping on people's couches, but made it work.
Wow. That's a tribute to, I guess, who you are and how your parents raised you to be like, I'm my own man. You can't help me anymore. I've got to start this life for myself on my own at 17, 18 years old is kind of crazy because a lot of kids these days stay with their parents till they're 34.
Right.
You definitely didn't want to do that. You end up winning U.S. Nationals at 15, and you're really professional at about 18 years old. And There's a lot of contests that lead up to when you're really professional. We're not going to talk about those. But one of the big moments in your career, and it wouldn't be a moment like a day, but you meet Matt Sturbins, and I don't know where you meet him. You can fill us in on that. And you guys have a discussion where you realize he can build you a ski that is a prototype half-pipe ski for you, and you decide to go with Forefront, and that's your sponsor for a long time. How does that relationship start?
It was actually Andy Woods was my coach at the time, and he was a good friend with Matt, and that was how the introduction happened. Matt came to Copper and was just kind of cruising, watching us practice and stuff, and I guess one or two of my tricks had caught his eye, and I was skiing for Rosignol at the time, and the main thing that I was struggling, this was at the time of my life when I was starting to get bigger and quite a bit stronger and really just putting the skis through the ringer, and I couldn't convince any big manufacturer to make skis better. They had gotten away with making park skis at lower and lower qualities, especially because people on park skis are usually hitting rails and sliding concrete and stuff. And so the turnaround is pretty quick and the price point has always been low. So none of these major manufacturers wanted to build pipe skis better and stronger and stiffer and with better base materials and things like that. That was the main topic of our first conversation with Forefront. Is like, I was not really very familiar with Forefront when I first talked to Matt. But I was just like, dude, I need better skis. What can we do to make a better ski for half piping? He was like, well, I don't know that we have a ton of money to pay you, but we certainly can make you some pretty good skis. So we didn't even talk about contracts or money or anything like that until after they had made the prototypes and I had tried them out. And I was like, this is what I want to do with my skiing career. And it has shaped my skiing career moving forward. Unfortunately, Forefront and I, we had to part ways and move on. But Moment Skis is based right out of Reno, Nevada, where I'm from. And where I still call home. And so I was able to walk right into the shop and say, hey, I need to design and make a new pipe ski. Are you guys willing? In there? And they jumped right on board. And the skis that I'm skiing here in Brack training right now are the best skis I've ever skied on in my life. So I think Matt definitely can take credit for ruining me for ever skiing for a large manufacturer again, because I've been able to make the skis exactly how I want them for a lot of years and had a lot of success because of that.
When you can make skis like you want them, yes, you get exactly what you want, except for being paid, because it seems like the big guys are the ones with the big checks. But you've got to sacrifice for quality, right?
Right. It comes down to, what do you want? Do you want a big contract, or do you want to put the skis on your feet that you can win contests on? That's what the decision came down to for me. And Forefront was very generous to me over the years. I'm not even going to harsh on them and say that they didn't pay me well, because they did.
They gave you a piece of the company, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a give and take, but could I have signed a larger contract with a major manufacturer? Absolutely. But would I have won as many competitions as I did? I don't know. I don't think so. I really felt like on those skis, I was able to be the best version of a skier that I could possibly be. And so that brought me to a whole lot of success. And it's a short-term versus long-term thing. Yeah, in the short term, did I sign smaller contracts? Yes. But in the long term, did I have greater success and a much more successful career? Yes is the answer to that second question. And that's where I feel really lucky that I was pushed in that direction.
With Forefront, you became the most decorated half-pipe skier ever. Hands down, right? There's no...
I don't know.
I mean, Dumont didn't win more than you, did he?
I don't know. Like maybe Tanner, because he was competing in slope and pipe and winning X Games in both.
But that's not just pipe.
Yeah, maybe I am. I've never really thought of it. I mean, certainly I'm the only Olympic gold medalist yet. So yeah, I feel like I said, I'm living the dream, man. I feel like I have been given the greatest gift that I could possibly have imagined in my life. And I don't really think about it in terms of success. I just love skiing, and I'm glad that I get to still do it for a living.
You've been more successful than any half-pipe skier in the history of the world, and you're on one brand for most of that. And how does it go down? Is it a financial thing? Because I know Forefront changed ownership and it had never really been profitable. So does Matt call you up and say, hey, man, it's just a function of numbers and we can't do this anymore? And does he buy you out of your ownership piece?
You want the dirty. You want the inside details.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's no hard feelings on either side, but I'm curious to how it went down.
Honestly, the way the conversation went is, listen, man, this is the worst thing that I ever feel like I'm going to have to tell you. We can't continue your contract. And I was already in a 2-year contract when this conversation happened. And he says, we're under new ownership, and the new ownership is not supporting park skiing. He's supporting park skiing 0% for forefront skis, which means your contract's gone. We're not going to make your ski anymore. This is the last year of your ski being on the market. I don't think that would have been Matt's desire at all, but that's the way it went down. And I just said, thank you for everything that you've done for me. I will forever respect you. And I cannot take credit for everything that I've done without you. So that was kind of where the conversation went. And that's when I reached out to Moment and we decided we could make something work. And I would ski for forefront till the day I died. But at the end of the day, I'm a professional skier. And that's how I keep the lights on in my house. That's how I feed my kids. That's how I pay the bills. So I had to move on.
And with such a tight-knit family that Forefront was throughout your career on them, did it feel like your girlfriend was breaking up with you?
A little bit, for sure. Just in talking about it right now, I'm sad. I feel like some of my best friends in the skiing industry are because of Forefront and are riders and owners and people who work for Forefront. So yeah, there's certainly some bitterness there when it comes down to it. But I would call it maybe more bittersweet because we've had a really good run and Forefront's still crushing it. They still make some of the best POW skis on the market. So that's all good. They're just not making park skis anymore, and that's the way it goes.
You got Jay Skied right there.
Yep.
Other sponsors, who else pays you?
Visa, Monster, First Light, Zipline Poles, and Lululemon Men is my workout clothing.
Solid list of sponsors. It's always great when it starts with Visa. I hope they pay you in prepaid Visa cards. So you are the best half-pipe skier in the history of the world. We've established that. And I'm not going to ask you a number because that's not polite. But if you were to have the best year you could ever have on paper, what's a range where you'd cash out? Would it be like a couple $100,000?
I feel like, and honestly, I'm coming off of two of my least successful seasons ever. We're not eating ramen at the Wise House just yet.
No podiums last year.
No podiums, not a single one. And my best result was fourth at the World Champs. So early in my career, I was almost 100% dependent on contest winnings in order to actually make money. And as my notoriety has grown and my sponsors have really chipped in more and more, I've been able to step a little bit away from that need for success on the podium. I still have been able to be, a professional athlete without winning a bunch of things, but that's only going to last so long. I don't think that your sponsors are going to sponsor you forever if you're not winning things.
You need more of an image if they will. I mean, if you had the image that every kid wanted to be you, they'll just keep paying you. But, you probably have to win every couple years.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, because of the way that I've shaped my career, and I did it the way I wanted to, competition is my favorite version of skiing. And people will hate on that, and they can hate on it all they want. People hate on it because it's the hardest way to ski. And I love filming too, and I'm going to be filming all spring after the Olympics are over. But at the end of the day, you can do a trick 10 times in a row on film and you only have to land it once. But when you want to do it in a contest, you have to land it first try. It's the hardest. And for whatever reason, that was what appealed to me the most. So I spent a lot less time filming and a lot less time taking photos. And I'm a lot less active on social media than a lot of other athletes because I have focused on the competition side of things. I've focused on the strength training and all the cross training and everything else. And I keep really busy with those things. So on a social media perspective, I'm probably one of the lower following people in the game. That doesn't translate to a lot of big contracts and a lot of edge, I guess, and that's fine. I try to let my skiing talk for me. That's always been my perspective about the thing is like, hey, I don't really care if people are talking about me or if I'm buzzing everybody's inbox as long as I just keep doing what I'm doing and enjoying it. So in returning to your question about if I crushed it, how much money would I make or what range of income I'm in? If I had a year where I won every single contest or had 4 or 5 podiums, I would be in a pretty high tax bracket. I've been very, very lucky and I have some good things going for me. But I wouldn't say that's true of pipe skiing in general. I think there's kind of an illusion out there about contest skiers getting paid a lot more than film skiers getting paid a lot more than whatever else. But the reality is the ski industry is hurting right now. Ain't nobody getting paid. And I've had to fight tooth and nail for every dollar I've gotten out of my sponsors in the last couple of years. And that's just the way it is. So in the pipe game right now, I would say there's a handful of guys who are still making money. And then there's a lot of guys who are kind of breaking even. And there's some guys who are in the top 20 in the world that are still paying to play. It's not the most lucrative thing in the world. You got to really love it to keep doing it.
If you're not on the podium in the contest world, no one wants to pay somebody for 7th.
Nope, absolutely not.
They'll take a chance on someone for 7th for a couple years. They're like, hey, we'll flow you skis. We'll give you a little travel. We want to see that 7th move up. But you can kind of tell, especially in the pipe world, because you guys have all developed. You're kind of the size that you're going to be. And it's just some people can take that support and make that work for them and take it to the next level. Some people just have head cases where they can't put runs together. And even if they have the most talent in the world, if they can't put a run together, they're gone.
Yep, and it's just a slow fade. And then they move on to something else.
In terms of your skiing, things are ramping up. You do a full year of skiing. I think you're in the US and then in New Zealand, and then you blow out your knee. And while everything looks like it's on the rise for you, the bottom falls out. And where are you mentally when your knee's blown, and are you still positive?
You're bringing up the dark era of my life, which I feel super grateful for having gone through that, because it's made me who I am. Definitely a really difficult time. And a lot of that comes down to a split-second decision that I made to do a trick when I shouldn't have. And I learned a whole lot from that that split-second mistake. Basically, what was going on in my life, I skied a full year, spent the entire summer in New Zealand skiing, and right towards the end of the summer in New Zealand, I landed the first ever double cork 1260 in the half pipe. It was a time in my life when I was the guy people were talking about. There was a lot of buzz around it.
I remember it.
Everybody was talking about, wow, Dave's going to come out and he's going to land this trick in contest, and nobody's going to be able to compete with him. He's going to win everything. And I let that sink into my head a little bit too much. And so coming out, first contest of the year was Dew Tour in Breckenridge. And I had practiced the trick a couple times and was stomping it. Everything was working good. And then the day of the contest rolled around and we were competing. This was in an 18-foot pipe. And the pipe just wasn't quite right. But I was so proud, and I was honestly so fired up about like starting this process of winning everything that I just decided to do it anyways. And so ironically, it was on the double cork 1260, which I was the first guy ever to do, that I blew out my knee and got to sit on the couch and watch everybody else for the year. And ironically, because I posted the video of the trick in New Zealand, Kevin Rowland was able to see it and say, hey, I think I could do that too. And he turned around and won every contest that year with the double cork 1260 while I sat on the couch and watched. And so that was a hard lesson. I'll tell you that much. That's the way life is. And I met my wife. Well, I had known my wife actually for a long time before that, but we really reconnected.
You met at church camp.
Yeah, we met at a church camp in high school. I was 16, she was 15. Something like that. But we reconnected while I was injured, probably because I was injured, actually. So that's when we started dating, and it was like wildfire. We were pretty much married a year later, or even within a year. And my little girl was soon to follow. So it was just a crazy, crazy time in my life.
I am now going to take a break to talk about my last set of sponsors. My next sponsor, Brews Beer. They drink beer and they have fun doing it, period. I'm talking about the 10 Barrel Brewery, and they're based out of Bend, Oregon. The folks at 10 Barrel pride themselves on shredding POW in the winter and drinking beer outside as often as possible. They're outdoors-minded people who believe in the products they make and love the place they live and play. They've just released their seasonal Goggle Tan IRA, and it is fantastic. 10 Barrel is at the end of their Goggle Tan tour that features live music, a mini pub, which is absolutely insane, and a ton of giveaways. It all happens from 2 to 5 p.m., and the final stop is February 24th at Eldora. 10 Barrel supports countless events in the world of snow and dirt. Their next big one is the Hella Big Air at Copper Mountain, and festivities start on March 1st and go through the weekend. If you ski or snowboard, support the beer that supports you. You can find out more about the Hella Big Air and all about 10 Barrel over at 10barrel.com. My final sponsor is the Summit at Snoqualmie, which has been my go-to ski destination for the past 20 years. And yeah, there are a lot of great places to ski in Washington State, but the Summit should be the go-to choice for Seattle skiers and snowboarders. As far as the mountains are concerned, Alpental is the choice for the hardcore rider, while East, West, and Central have something for everyone. But really, the Summit's 45 minutes away from Seattle, which makes powder weekday mornings a reality. You can shred the Summit and be back at your desk by noon. And on weekends, I never spend more than an hour and a half in my car round trip, and I've never had to turn around because I can't find a parking spot. It's the only place in Washington that can boast that. And if you don't ski or snowboard, you have to check out the tubing hill. Anyone can do it, and it's so much fun. Head on over to summit@snoqualmie.com to find out more information. Those are the sponsors. Now let's get back into it. You're out 2010, and then 2011 you're getting back, but your tricks are just coming back, and you have a baby around that time too. Life is not 100% skiing. It's 100% get my knee strong and get confident and my wife and child. Then 2012 comes around, and that's really when life changes for you. That's when the dreams of 3 years earlier winning every contest, that's when it happens.
Yeah. I think it maybe was because of my daughter that I really was able to break that seal I had been trying to break for a long time. I mentioned earlier that I used to try to do Tanner's runs when I was a young kid. And I would watch his run trick for trick, grab for grab. That was when I was 15. And I could do his runs at 15 years old, trick for trick, grab for grab. And he was winning at everything back then. And so I had been at a skill level high enough to be on a lot of podiums for a long time, but I could not land a run to save my life. I was not a good contest skier. I just straight up, I was good at practice, and I can't tell you how many practices I won, but don't nobody care about who wins the practice. And it was actually having my daughter and my wife there, and just like the new perspective that gave me about life. Basically, I realized that I had been taking skiing a lot too seriously for a long time. I was militant about training. I was militant about getting better. I was like, I'm going to be the absolute best skier I can possibly be. And I was relentless, but that didn't translate into the ability to land contest runs. It didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter how much better I was than everybody else at doing certain tricks, because if I couldn't do those tricks when the contest was on, I wasn't going to finish well. So I had my little girl, and I just realized that like my wife and daughter don't really care if I win or lose. They love me and they want me to be a good dad and a good husband first. And at the end of the day, they're still going to love me one way or the other. And it just gave me this perspective about skiing that I realized, wow, this is an opportunity. Like, this is my chance to go out and do something that I love to do. So I'm just going to enjoy it rather than pressuring myself and saying I have to win. I'm going to go out there and do what I think should be done on a pair of skis. I'm going to go do runs that nobody else is doing. And if I win, great. If I don't, oh well, like I'm still the luckiest guy. I get to go out and do this for a living. So I just had this cool, calm demeanor about competing that year, and it worked out. I couldn't lose at that point.
It was just an incredible run where you won every contest. It seemed like that year there might have been one or two that you didn't.
Yeah. It started out with an X Games win, and that was my second X Games. I had missed the X Games the year that I injured myself. That was the first time I got invited to the X Games, was the year that I blew my knee. And then the next year I came back. I actually qualified first or second going into finals. And then 3 runs in finals, I crashed. The X Games was the first contest that year that I won. And then it was 4 contests in a row and kind of rolled right into the next season. And I just went on a hot streak.
And the X Games is your Super Bowl, I would think, your Olympics before people knew they could go to the Olympics.
Yep, absolutely. There was the Super Bowl back then.
And what means more to you in general? Obviously, the Olympics is much bigger in global exposure. It also creates a lot more headaches for you in appearances. But are you more proud on top of that X Games podium or hearing the national anthem?
Oh, that's a tough call. I think on the respect of the sport side and the level of respect you get from your peers, an X Games win still has probably like more street cred, because X Games invites the best riders in the world, no matter which country they come from. Whereas the Olympics invites 4 guys from every country. Case in point, this year for the U.S. team, we're going to send 4 guys to the Olympics for halfpipe. And 2 of the guys who are going to have to sit at home could be guys who could win the contest on game day. So the 5th place and 6th place skiers are at such a level that they certainly are dudes who could win the Olympics, and they're not even going to be there. So the level of competition is actually a little bit lower at the Olympics than it is at the X Games. That being said, there's a whole lot more on the line. So, representing your country and all the exposure that is the Olympic Games makes competing there, well, even harder. So, yeah, I guess all I've done with this answer is give you a lot of talking about with no decision. I don't know. Street cred wise, X Games. Competitive level as a contest, as a competitive athlete my entire life, obviously the apex of any professional athlete in individual sports is the Olympics.
The Olympics is run by the FIS. It's part of that.
It's under the FIS umbrella. Yep.
And what are your thoughts on that? Because some people, everybody hates them. I was going to say some people love them, some people hate them. Everybody hates them except for the people that work there.
Yeah, who loves them? What are they smoking? There's negatives and positives to it. Certainly, I think that and I can't say that we can have too much pride about this, but free skiing has done a really good job of holding on to its soul in spite of FIS. And I think that falls on the shoulders of the athletes and the fact that we have said, the athletes, honestly, the judges and everybody involved in free skiing, we have said, you know what, we are not going to let you take our soul away. So you can either embrace us for who we are and what our sport represents, if you want us, or you can walk away from our sport. And so FIS has made a lot more concessions to our sport than they have ever made in the entire history of skiing and snowboarding. So things that we have said, they've had to listen. A good example of this is a couple of years ago, they tried to put their World Championship event, which is their flagship event for the year, at the same time as X Games. And we just said, all right, guys, we're going to boycott then. We're not going. The X Games is the reason our sport exists. The reason competitive skiing is still a big deal is because the X Games gave us media presence all these years. So we're going to go to the X Games. It means more to us than the World Championships. Had it been the X Games versus the Olympics, you would have seen a different story. But FIS, in their arrogance, had decided to try to put their event up against our event. And we said, all right, then we're not going. And they had a subpar World Championships because of it. And I think they learned a big lesson from that. They said, okay, we're not going to mess with the free skiers anymore. We need to make some concessions to them in the same way that they need to make some concessions to us.
Who was the world champion that year?
Kyle Smain.
Who?
Kyle Smain. He's a guy from South Lake. He's a good shredder.
Not as big a name as you would think.
Your point is made. Yeah, for sure. Even Kyle would say that. He would be like, no, I mean, yeah, I won the World Championships that year, but I didn't win. I don't feel like a world champion.
Well, David Wise wasn't the world champion that year. He was.
Exactly.
Fast forward into the next year, which is like the biggest year of your life so far. It's the Olympic year, and you win the X Games going into the Olympics. You have to have the ultimate amount of confidence, and you go home, and then you deliver another shot heard around the world. You don't have a child, but you conceive one. I don't know why I have this information, but I do.
I don't know where you got a lot of intel here.
I get some stuff, yeah. And then you go to the Olympics. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But going to the Olympics, what's your stress level about making the team? Or is it pretty much a given that you're going to be on the Olympic team based on the way you're performing in 2013-14?
I would say that my confidence level was super high, but at no point did I ever think it was a given. Because the level of competition was just super high at that point. We had a really good team. And, you always have good contests and bad contests every given year. And in order to qualify for the team, the only way to guarantee that you're going to qualify for the team was to win 2 events. And I had certainly had years where I didn't win 2 events by January. So I've kind of mentioned this a couple of times, but I really feel like I can credit a lot of my success to a lot of my failures. So I actually came out and won the first qualifier of the year. I was working on a new run, a new style of run that I wanted to do, and struggled in the second contest and didn't make finals. So that was kind of a wake-up call, because it was like, hey, man, this isn't a given. Even though you won the first one, look, you can actually not make finals. It had been a long time before that since I had not made a final. There were certainly finals where I didn't perform well, but there wasn't any qualifiers that I didn't get through.
But if you're not skiing smart, because for you, if you're trying a new run, I think that's not skiing smart. It's like, hey, make the finals, then throw your badass run. And if you land it, great. And if you don't, you don't. But it sounds like that's probably how you learn from your mistakes.
Exactly. I was overconfident and I realized, okay, I really need to focus on these, even though where my head was is I'm going to be on the Olympic team. And so I need to get that run ready. And like you said, I was overconfident. I wasn't skiing smart because I wasn't focusing enough on the runs in between, the runs to get there. And so I had that experience, got to watch the finals as a spectator, and it really gave me some fire. I came out and won the next qualifier. Then my ticket was punched and I was going. But it really did teach me a lot. It was like, okay, the Olympics are important and it's good to have a long game. It's good to have a strategy for it, but you still got to make the dang team. And so that's what I can say about this year too, is like, I've won one qualifier so far, and all I need is another first or a second, and my ticket's punched, and I'm going to Korea. And to some people, they say, oh, well, for sure you're going to be there. I'm ready to watch you there. And it's like, well, you can say that all you want, but I'm not thinking about it that way. I'm certainly focusing on these events in between to get there. It's not going to be easy.
You probably thought you had it a couple weeks ago, or maybe not thought you had it, but you qualified in first and then blew up in the finals. And that could have been your ticket to the Olympics, but you have, 3 or 4 more shots to make that happen?
2 more shots. So we have the Snowmass Grand Prix followed by the Mammoth Grand Prix. So those are my next 2 shots at getting a podium result and punching my ticket to Korea. And you're right. I certainly was poised to potentially punch my ticket, and I had the run constructed. And in practice on finals day, first of all, we were competing at 9 a.m., which was the earliest I've ever done a final in my life. And nothing was going right for me. I broke a ski in practice, and then I broke a binding on my first run of the contest, broke a binding on my second run of the contest. So in a short span, I had gone through 3 pairs of skis. And my last run of the contest at Dew Tour last week was on the least broken pair of skis that I had. And so people could look at that and say, oh, he must have been overconfident. He qualified first. He thought he was just going to come out and win. And certainly I will retrospectively look back and see if that's my assessment. I would say some days it's just not your day. And that was how it was for me at Dew Tour. But at the same time, one thing that I was able to accomplish at Dew Tour was I was able to put all 4 directions of double corks in one run. Even though I didn't land it well, I landed it. I did switch right dub first hit, into left dub 12, into a right 10, into a switch left dub 10, and capped off with a right dub 12. That was my goal for Dew Tour. And my approach as a skier is always to, rather than focusing on the things that are outside my control, I've tried to focus on the things that I do have control over. At the end of the day, I could land my best run of my life and still get 4th place because the judges might be having a bad day or my competitors might just be having that good of a day. So if I go into an event like Dew Tour and say, well, today at the Dew Tour, I want to win, I'm really setting myself up for failure because I don't have control over that. I can land a great run and still not win. So essentially, I did accomplish my goal for Dew Tour at Dew Tour because I got all 4 dubs into a run and landed it. I had a lot of things that I needed to clean up going forward, but it's progress. And I think as long as I do land that run at one of these next 2 qualifiers, it's going to be good enough. And certainly that's my strategy. I sure hope it is. But that's why I didn't really let Dew Tour rattle me too much because it's just building momentum.
Would it be embarrassing if you didn't make the team?
By no means would it be embarrassing if I didn't make the team. I don't know if I've hyped it up enough.
How good people are?
How good half-pipe skiing is right now. It's kind of sad because if anything, the industry is starting to take less notice of pipe skiing and there's kind of like a turn your nose up at contest skiing in general. But ironically, I would say contest skiing is at the highest level it ever has been. It's the most fun to watch. So if I can shamelessly plug anything in this podcast, it's that y'all need to be watching contest skiing, both slopestyle and halfpipe. It's unreal right now. Everybody's got a different run. Everybody's got a different approach to the halfpipe. Aaron Blunk's doing switch dub 9 to switch dub 10. Torin always going to, he's inevitably going to send it to the moon and either win the contest or crash. Yeah, Alex Ferreira is like on one like I've never seen. Gus Kenworthy is a wild card in there. Like it's the level is super high. And all those dudes I just mentioned are Americans. And that doesn't even include the Frenchies and the Canadians who are just equally impressive. So it's fun to watch and everybody's unique. It's not what people say it is about contest skiing. Like it's not everybody's doing the same run and it's a competition for who can do it better. It's actually what free skiing is all about, which is everybody skiing their way and seeing who can do the best run of the day.
I wouldn't say that people are saying everybody's doing the same run now compared to like what was happening 10 years ago almost. It was getting stale back in the day of people doing the same run. Once dubs hit, that separated the men from the boys, and it's really exciting to watch, especially pipe. I mean, with slope, I think them changing up the courses and making things different. With pipe, you know what you're going to get. And it's guys like yourself that blow people's minds, especially in person when they can see how high you're boosting. It's like, whoa.
It's dynamic.
Yeah, it's incredible. The money in skiing with contest skiing, my thought on that is, I don't know how many pairs of skis it sells, especially pipe skiing, I would say, because to do what you have to do, it's not attainable to a lot of people. To get 12 feet out of a pipe, 1% of the population is ever going to do that in their entire lives because it's hard. There's a reason that you get paid good money to do what you do because most people can't do it.
Yeah.
I think the manufacturers, maybe when the Olympics started, thought that skis would be sold. And the Olympics are more brand awareness than ski sales, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Trust me, you're talking to the right guy about this. I've been a part owner of a ski company for the last 5 years. So I know that we're not selling a lot of pipe skis, and we never expected to sell a lot of pipe skis because there's, like you said, there's not a lot of people who want to ski up a 22-foot wall of ice. But it is about brand awareness, and I think that there's definitely some value there, and you can see that just by how many non-endemic sponsors get involved when you're in the Olympic Games. Like, look at, guys like Gus Kenworthy. We were talking about if I could crush it and which tax bracket would I qualify for. I can tell you Gus is in the top tax bracket because he's just so notorious and people value that. And so, yeah, it is kind of interesting how contest skiing has gone from, as far as the brand strategy has gone from, we're going to put the skis that we want people to buy on the contest skier so that they'll buy them, to more of like, okay, we're going to just put our logo on these guys because nobody wants to buy those skis anymore.
You bring up Gus being in a different tax bracket. And I would say that for better or worse in skiing and snowboarding, it's full of the cool kids. There's not that many guys that are known for faith and talking about it. And given in our conversation, it's not something that you're throwing out, but it's something I know that's part of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That can't help you in terms of sponsorship dollars. Being a cool skier guy, I don't think you put crosses on your helmet. I don't know if you do or not, but I feel like no one wants to see that. And I don't know what your take on that is, but I feel like sponsors aren't going to buy into that as much because it's polarizing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's interesting that I certainly get typecast as this like Bible thumping Christian. And the reality is I've never been that. And I don't want to force my religion on anybody. It's just me. It's who I am. So I've never been super outspoken about it because I don't want to convey the message in the wrong way. I don't want to force my beliefs on people. I certainly feel like my relationship with God has enriched my life in a way that nothing else I've ever done has. So it's part of who I am. And if you ask me about it, certainly I'll talk about it. But I'm not going to force those beliefs on you. And I'm not even going to tell you that I'm right. I'm just going to tell you this is what I happen to believe is the truth. And this is why. But it doesn't help when it comes to sponsorship dollars. And honestly, having a wife and a kid doesn't help either. People want their athletes in my age bracket to be attractive and single because that sells products. And whether I'm attractive or not, I'm not single. And I am very outspoken about how amazing my wife is and how in love with her I am and how much I love being the father to my 2 kids. So that doesn't help either. But at the end of the day, do I really care? No. I'm making enough money to keep the lights on in my house. And the fulfillment for me is more important than the dollar signs. And that is what I can say about that subject is that I feel like I'd rather be, and this is going to sound like a cliche, but I'd rather be broke and happy than rich and miserable. So I've been given an amazing life and I've chosen to just embrace that.
So that's a difference between how Gus can make money and you.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm not bitter about it. I honestly understand it. I'm a businessman. I've owned a couple of businesses. And so I understand why I'm not as marketable as Gus. It doesn't hurt my feelings. It's just true.
We're getting back to Sochi because we really didn't even talk about that, or we got to it, but then we started talking about sponsors.
Sorry, I rabbit trailed on you.
No, it's all good, man. I like to go out and then bring it right back in. So you go to the Olympics. Are there any notable stories leading up to the actual contest? Because I know there was a lot of snow and it seemed like an epic powder day for a lot of people. Did you get that epic powder day?
Gosh, I wish I could have had my fat skis on that day, man. It was nuking. It was really crazy. We competed qualifiers and finals in the same day, which is out of the ordinary. It was a lot of mayhem. I can't say this for sure, but I think that my experience versus the other guys on the team and a lot of the other guys in the field really came into play because we started the Olympic process. You know, you're named to the team, all this hype, you do a ton of interviews. And then we actually flew into Munich and did our team processing stuff there. And then got all our team uniforms and 10 bags of stuff and went over to Russia. And then we were 2 weeks early for our contest. So we're sitting there in the coastal village watching ice skating and like curling. And we're like, what do we do? You know, like we couldn't ski the half pipe and there wasn't a half pipe somewhere else in Russia we could just wander over to and train in. So I think that we got a little stale. And I can attribute my success to my experience there because I was able to kind of enjoyed the Olympic experience and say, man, this is super cool. I'm so proud to be part of Team USA and cheer on the other teams. But then when it came to about a week out from when we were competing, I just shut down. I didn't go to other events. I started visualizing, and I kept working out in the gym the entire time so that I could keep just that snap in my muscles that I knew I was going to need, even though I had 2 weeks off basically before we were going to do it. So I really feel like that was my foundation going into the contest. And that's why I was able to land runs, even though the conditions were awful and it was not ideal. I put down a couple of good runs, and at the end of the day, I was as surprised as a human can be that I won the contest. It's kind of funny looking back because everybody had been telling me that I was going to win, and they're like, oh man, you're the favorite, blah, blah, blah. I just never let that enter my space for some reason. I just was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on what I'm doing. I'm going to focus on doing these cool runs. I really had a run that I had been crafting for a long time that I wanted to do. Didn't end up getting to do it because the conditions were so bad, but I was really focused on that. And they told us ahead of time, hey, you need to pack your maybe win bag. If you win the contest, you're going to basically get kidnapped and taken down and do interviews for 24 hours straight. So you need to have a bag packed in order to be ready for that. And I didn't even pack the bag. I wasn't like, oh man, I might win today, so I need to have this bag ready. I just was like, no, I'm going to go compete. And I brought all the normal things that I would normally compete with. I had my backpack with a water bottle and a couple extra pairs of goggles and some extra gloves. So they asked me when I won, they're like, where's your podium bag? I was like, yeah, just go back to my room and grab my suitcase. So I dragged my whole suitcase around with me because I wasn't allowing my brain to go into that headspace of like, I might win, so I need to be ready. Because this is maybe a little tidbit that if anybody who competes can benefit from. As soon as you start thinking about what happens after the contest, or what might happen after the contest, or what could happen after the contest, you're not thinking about what you're doing right now. So I just didn't let that into my space. I didn't let myself go there like, oh man, if I land that right dub 14, then the judges are going to like it. And then I'm going to win the Olympics. You know, yeah. I was more like, hey, I need to land that right dub 14. That was where my mind was. And so I was really surprised. And for the 24 hours after the win, I still was in disbelief because I was just, I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. I was surprised. I was like, wow, I actually won it. Really? Like, did that really happen, or is this a dream? You know?
Is it full on interviews? You're up for 24 hours? Or are you just saying that because it was a long day, or how does that work?
I'm not lying, man. They make you do interviews for 24 hours straight. It's insane. You go from one to the next to the next. And luckily, they were all asking me pretty much the same questions because by the end, I don't even know what I was saying.
After 24 hours of interviews, when do you actually hit the podium and hear the anthem?
Our event was super late in the day, so we had a full 24-hour period before we even got to see the medals or touch them or stand on the podium. So that was another part of the disbelief too, was that like I had won the contest, but I didn't have a gold medal to show anybody. And I was doing all these interviews, and every interview, where's the gold medal? It's like, oh, well, the podium ceremony's later today. Hope you guys come and check it out. So that was a really interesting experience. And everybody told me going in, they're like, man, you're going to cry. I don't care how tough you are. You're going to get up on that podium and you're going to cry. And I was like, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm unemotional, especially as a dad. I'm a lot more emotional now that I have kids. But I'm a pretty logical thinker, and I've always been pretty proud of that. Like, oh yeah, I don't cry. I don't need that. But I stood up on that podium and the anthem was playing, and I was thinking about everything that went into that, the Star Spangled Banner, and how much sacrifice and history was involved in that song. And then collectively, how much sacrifice my parents had made and my family and friends had made to get me to that point. And I started crying, man. It was inevitable. It just hit me. It hit me really hard. That may forever be the best or the most epic moment of my athletic career. I would certainly put having kids above that because that has more value to me in the long run. But as athletically, that was the best moment I maybe will ever experience.
So you're going to say Olympics instead of X Games?
I guess so. I guess I just did.
There's a lot of great things that happen. You have a day on the Nevada calendar now, right?
Yep.
What's your day?
February 28th.
So any calendar printed in Nevada has David Wise on it on that day?
I'm not sure if it's at that level, but the governor of Nevada has the opportunity to create days of recognition. And so he created David Wise Day on February 28th.
Well, that was very nice of him.
Goes right into the category. I tell people all the time that I have 2 file folders or 2 backpacks in my brain of things that happened that were normal and things that happened that just surprised the heck out of me. And that one definitely fits into the unrealistic category of things that I never thought would happen. It was so cool to be able to get my state stoked like that. I was the first ever Olympic gold medalist from Nevada, born and raised. And that was super cool. So they freaked out. There was billboards around town. I did a parade, David Wise Day, all these crazy things that I never saw coming.
So I Googled Nevada and famous people from Reno, and your name doesn't come up on any of them, man. It's bullshit. There's a lot of people that are less famous to me. There's like a songwriter who wrote the score to Cheers or something, and they're on there and you're not. And it's kind of bullshit, but I don't think you care at all.
I better get my PR team on that.
Yeah. Do you have a PR team?
Well, my PR team is headlined by my wife.
Okay.
And she's real good at it. But I actually do have, especially for the Olympics, having had the experience last time and knowing what's coming or what could be coming, I definitely have a PR team who's going to help me out.
And another big thing that you would need PR for happened between the Olympics and now. I smile every time I watch this video, and it's stupidly ridiculous. You set the world record for big air on a hip, and it's like, what, 45 feet out?
46 and a half.
Whose idea was that?
That's a really good question. It was at 9 Nights, and that basically came from a previous year of 9 Nights. They had a big hip, and we kind of mentioned to Nico, the event organizer, we were like, hey, man, if you had a bigger in-run into this hip, we're pretty sure we could set a new record. And that got his brain firing because Nico's all about progression. He's all about creating opportunities for progression. And so 2 years ago, the main idea of the event was we're going to build the biggest hip that's ever been made, and we're going to set the record. This was kind of an unstated thing, but I think that it was well known that we were going to set a new record for both skiing and snowboarding for the highest air on a hip. Interestingly enough, it's actually the highest non-motorized jump ever in any avenue.
Huh.
That's my favorite part of the whole thing. It's like, that's really cool. I'm the highest guy without a motor.
Suck it, Matt Hoffman. You're used to being way high out of a pipe, 20 feet out of a pipe. You're not used to being 45 feet out of anything.
No.
Do you stay on your feet the whole time, or are there some slams in that?
Oh, there was some slams for sure. Basically, it came down to the fact that the feature was perfect. I can't take credit for having been the guy who went 46 and a half feet without giving most of the credit to the builders and how clean and pristine that feature was, how perfectly the angles worked. And the guys I was competing with, I mean, I'm not the only guy who broke the record that day. I just happened to have broken it by the most. So at the end of the day, it was kind of one of those days where you have certain expectations and then they just go out the window. Like first or second hit, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll go 30 feet out today because I had showed up a day late. So everybody had already hit it and they had measured them. And they're like, oh, well, Joff is going 35 feet out already. Like, this is going to be pretty crazy. And so I was like, man, 35 feet out, that sounds really fun. But as soon as I hit it for the first time, I was like, man, I'm going to go as fast as I possibly can into this thing because it is set up absolutely perfectly. And I think the only limiting factor for not going bigger than we did was the fact that we ran out of landing. The hip landing, I literally landed past what would normally be the knuckle on a big air jump. And I was into the small zone. It's like kind of like landing at the very end of the half pipe where it gets really small.
Yeah.
That's where we were landing when we set the record. So certainly there were some slams because we were trying to find the perfect spot and go as big as we possibly could without going too big. Nobody went over the end of the landing, fortunately, but both Christoph Schenk and we both definitely took some heavy landings and slid out. And he had one that was just to the moon and he almost held onto it but crashed. And so, yeah, it was crazy.
As we move forward, you struggled for a couple years. On paper, it was not like David Wise in terms of competition. I think you probably have your second child around that point. But is there any reason why last year you didn't hit the podium and the year before that you might have hit a couple podiums, but it wasn't like signature David Wise?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons behind it. Chronologically, I can say that the year after the Olympics, first of all, I had more appearances and obligations than I ever expected to have in my whole life. So certainly, no matter how good you are, that's going to take away from your athletic performance a little bit. But then going into X Games that year, I really had this desire to land something similar to the run that I wanted to do in Sochi, which included doing a right side dub 14 and landing switch. So I was like, no, I don't care about being on the podium again. I'm going to land this right dub 14. And so I tried it 3 times, landed it second run, and actually crashed on my last trick in that run, and then crashed on it again in the third run. So that was where my mind was, is I still was focused on progressing my skiing more than landing on the podium. And then the 2 seasons following that were just, to quote another cliche, there was just a series of unfortunate events. I would be skiing good and I would walk out of a ski in the middle of a contest run for no reason, or going into late December or actually early January in 2016, crashed, concussed myself, separated my shoulder, and set my back out of alignment. Not dislocated it, not to that level, but I was injured. I wasn't injured badly enough to be taking time off, but I was just not on my game. I basically could only rotate my back maybe 80% of what it normally would rotate. So I'm a fighter. I'm relentless. I kept fighting through it and kept trying to make it happen, but it just didn't work out. And then last year, same thing happened to me. It was just getting ready for the big contests. I had kind of a bad day competing in copper and didn't land a run. And maybe it was a little under skied. Like I hadn't gone to New Zealand or done any fall training that year. I had some other things, like you said, having a second kid and trying to keep the home situation on lock took away from my ability to train a lot. And I came into the first event and kind of realized, wow, I'm a little bit behind. I need to work hard. And as I was working hard in the early time of the year, I ended up slamming on the deck one more time and concussed myself again and set my back out of joint. So I did 2 years in a row of X Games and all the big contests of the year at probably 80%, if not less. And so it was just a series of unfortunate events. And at the end of the day, I think that I put my kids and family first when it came to those things, rather than saying, all right, kids and wife, like, you're on the back burner. I need to get back on top of the game. I said, okay, I'm not on the top of the game right now, but that's okay because you guys are more valuable to me than being on top of the game. My wife and I have done some restructuring of our approach, and I feel as good as I possibly could going into this year because I've spent a lot of time on skis and I'm really confident that they feel loved and they don't feel like I'm abandoning them back home. So yeah, I'm in a good place right now. And I really do, I'll say this again, I really do feel like the adversity that I've gone through in my life is part of what makes me successful. So I could look back, even in going back to the concept of a series of unfortunate events, some of those unfortunate events were things that were outside my control. Like one contest, the judges thought I missed a grab. I showed them the footage later. I was like, does that look like I misgrabbed you? And they were like, oh, no, actually.
That sucks.
That happened twice last year. So that was outside my control. And that was when I was skiing well. So I could get bitter about that, or I could just say, you know what? I'm going to take this and use it as fuel. And ironically, the 2 contests that I missed finals in last year were really influential in crafting the run that I'm doing this year. I have always thought about doing switch right dub, but I always thought it was too hard. I was like, man, that'd be cool, but I'm not good enough. But watching that contest, I realized that was what was missing from everybody's skiing. It's like everybody's doing a lot of cool things, but there ain't nobody doing both ways switch dubs. And I want to do that. Aaron Blanc is actually doing it too, but he's doing it a little different than I am. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I would encourage everybody, if you feel like you're in the struggle time of your life, if you feel like you're in the black cloud, just embrace it. Just say, you know what? This is fuel. This is fuel for the fire.
And I just say, go crawl in a corner and cry, and you're never going to be anything. I heard that you worked your ass off this summer and that you're fully back. But to you, it seems like you didn't really go anywhere. Maybe
you're right. Maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm not always as aware of what's going on around me as the people who are watching from the outside. So I would say maybe there was a little bit of a lull in my work ethic. And a lot of that was family related and life outside of skiing related, because I didn't have the availability to work as hard as I normally would. But I would say going into this year, I've worked harder than I ever have in my life going into a season. And it's paid off.
I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about bow hunting, but I feel like your friend Remy, you can embrace bow hunting, start posting on social media with the Christian values that you have. And I don't want to peg you as that, but that really resonates well with the hunting crowd. And hunting is way bigger than skiing could ever be in terms of numbers, I feel like. Given that I don't know anybody that hunts really, it seems like in terms of media, the hunting shows get a lot of traction, and you can be that Olympic gold medalist who's out there killing things and eating them as well. But I think that can be your cash cow because he's got like 5 times the amount of social following that you have.
Yeah, exactly. He's a boss. Remy is somebody that inspires me. He's a good friend of mine. We hang out all the time, and I think there's definitely a level of mutual respect there. Remy's a badass. He is who I hope to be like in the outdoor world. So certainly that's part of my trajectory. I'm going to actually be competing a lot more in target archery this summer and making a run at doing that at least semi-professionally. And then you guys can stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a lot more media on the hunting side. And I think you make a good point. Like people who, at least for me, I feel like I am closest to God when I'm out in the wilderness. For whatever reason, that resonates with my soul. That's why I believe there's a God, is because I've spent a lot of time out in the wilderness and I just see it and I say, this is undeniable. I feel like God made this for people to enjoy. So it does resonate with the hunting community, the fact that I am a man of faith and have a wife and kids that I put above anything else in my life. So yeah, it's definitely part of my plan and something that I enjoy doing. I would say that there's a lot of people who struggle to make money in hunting in the same way that there's a lot of people who struggle to make money in skiing. I think you know from talking to me for the last hour that I don't really care if I ever make a lot of money in my life.
Yeah.
I just want to keep doing what I love doing and make enough to keep the lights on in the house. As long as I got the things that really matter to me, like food to eat and my kids and wife are safe and have a good environment to grow up in, then you can take all the rest of the money. I don't need it.
You are the most decorated half-pipe skier of our time and ever. No one has done more than you in a half-pipe. What else do you have to prove?
Nothing and everything. That's my simple short answer to that question. I have nothing left to prove. I don't need to win another contest in order to be fulfilled. I don't need to win another contest to have everybody's respect. I really do feel that I have my competitors' respect as much as I could ever desire to have. And I have mutual respect for them, but I don't have anything to prove to anybody as far as another result. But I still haven't done everything that I want to do on a pair of skis yet. My approach to skiing has always been, what's not being done and can I do it? I want to take the body that I have, the brain that I have been training all my life, and do something. I want to see how far I can go. That's essentially the end of it, is I want to see how far I can go. So I still have things to prove because I haven't finished. I haven't gotten bored yet. I haven't had a day or a season where I was like, you know what? I really feel like I did everything that I wanted to do that season. Every year at the end of the year, I'm like, man, I had some great moments, but I still got some stuff to do. And a huge part of that for me this year after the Olympics is going to be getting into the backcountry and doing a lot more filming, doing a lot of the things that I've said no to because I was trying to crush it as a competition skier. I'm definitely going to be diversifying. And like I said, stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more media from me coming out.
It is a refreshing interview.
You as well.
Thanks, man. No, it's an awesome conversation. I tell everyone that I hope they win the Olympic gold medal because it's rude if you don't say that. You don't want anybody to win silver. So I hope you win the Olympic gold medal again.
Well, I appreciate it.
So that was time with David Wise, and in a few hours, I predict that David will be standing on the podium at the Olympic Games with his second gold medal. He's a kid who seemed to figure everything out in life by taking nothing from his parents, working as hard as he could, and keeping his faith, family, and redneck side in check while pushing forward on the biggest stage in the world. Next week, it's another Olympic episode, and then I'll get back to mixing it up with my guests. First, Devin Logan will come on the show. She's the Sochi silver medalist in halfpipe, and we chatted this summer while she was training at Mount Hood, and then we connected again the day before she headed to South Korea. And it's cool to hear the excitement in her voice in our second chat. That's all next Monday. For now, I ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on, share my social posts, and tell your friends about the show. I also want to thank my sponsors. They are Evo, Rescue Water, 10 Barrel Brewery, and the Summit at Snoqualmie. Thanks everyone for listening, and have a great week.